Shut up and sit down.
It's where the big boys play. SICW.
Welcome to Square Podcast, everybody. I forgot what number we were on, so we were busy doing other stuff.
Show prep.
I want to say it's like 769.
Yes, so.
Or probably.
Oh,
90.
there's my torture chamber back there.
I want to say we're probably on 89 or 90.
I know we're in the 80s, somewhere around there.
Yeah, that's when I was born.
Somewhere around there? Somewhere around the 80s?
In the 80s, yeah.
Probably just a little.
Well, so as we get started, first thing I want to do is just shout out to everyone who's been subscribing lately.
So, on our YouTube page, there are 89 episodes already posted, so this must be 90.
See, I thought I'm right on it. So, so we had an influx of subscribers, and we appreciate that. Been getting a lot of views here. And I think we had one just popped up today. One of the videos today popped up, which was the Sam Mushnick retirement match. So I'm looking forward to see what how many views that gets, because Sam Mushnick was such a legend in the wrestling world for the NWA, for basically being the idol to Herb Simmons, because he definitely shows the same characteristics as Sam Mushnick. Always being dressed in a suit, dress clothes, tie, always thinking the fans are coming and leaving. And he's done such a big thing for Herb, and letting Herb and Larry, try to sneak some of the knowledge of Sam's, stuff. And now that Herb has got most of Larry's stuff from wrestling at the Chase too, so he's got the results cards and the big books of the newsletters that they used to send out. So I'm interested to see that match again too, because I just skimmed through it earlier today.
I watched that one a lot.
Did you? Do want to start off news-wise with SICW news. We just had the SICW Explosion show on yesterday, and it kind of set things up for the 23rd, which is our last show of the year, but also the most, I guess, the show that means the most to a lot of us, whether it be the locker room, the fans, because it's the show that determines if Herb Simmons is going to sell the place or if he's going to keep it in the family and keep running it. So I'll just start off with that match first. So it's a big tag match. It's 3 against 3 with some special arrangements in there. You got the team of Haku, Barbarian, and Attila Khan versus Danny Boy, Ron Powers, and Gary Jackson, with a special thing that was just announced that Bob Orton is going to be handcuffed to Stephen E. to make sure Stephen E. doesn't interfere in this match. We do know Lilith Khan is going to be around that too, so really we should have someone handcuffed to her. That would have been great too, but so
There
this
won't
for all the
be
marbles.
a shortage of young guys out there trying to get handcuffed to her.
But so this is for all the marbles. If Team Attila wins, then Herb will sign over control of SICW to Stephen E. Yeah, but if the good team wins, the team that's going to win, Danny Boy or Gary Jackson or Ron Powers, there was no stipulation of what's going to happen to Stephen E. But I guess at least getting the rights to not selling the company away is great enough. But I would love for it to be something, bad happening to Stephen E. That would be great. But as long as the company of SICW stays with Herb Simmons and the family, that's going to be the best scenario or outcome.
I'll say you can think of it this way: Stephen E. is got investors, right? So if he doesn't lead this team to victory, he's going to piss off his investors. So even if we don't see something bad happen, I'm sure there's, how the Middle Easterners work.
Yeah, they'll send them to Israel.
Ooh, don't get political now.
That's not political.
But yeah, so that's definitely the main event that night. And then Bobby's got a match too. We found that one out.
Yep, it's 2 out of 3 falls with Glenn Williams. Last chance to get my title back before we end for the year. And like right back to the main event there, it's like dire desperation to get that title back too, because let's say Stephen E. does win and I'm not a champion or something, like I might not have a job. Like he might just say, "You're out of here."
Well, he's already called me out.
If I have one of his titles on my shoulder, it's not going to be fun to work for him. I'm sure I'll get screwed over a lot, but at least there'll be incentive to keep me.
Well, during his last interview, Harry Dunn called out, Gary Jackson and me and, Danny Boy and told us all that if he wins right away, we're all going to get fired. So.
See, that's what I'm saying. Like that main event has a lot riding on it, like for the whole locker room. And then this is just kind of I need to win this match, not only because I want the title, of course, but try to secure my job a little bit more just in case, worst case scenario.
Well, pretty much the same thing for me, because I actually get my title shot, my rematch clause against Kowalski for the classic title. Now, if I win and Stephen E.'s team wins, who's to say I'm not just going to walk out with that title and say, "Get your own damn title"?
He'll at least offer you a lot of money to get it back.
Right. I can't imagine working for Stephen E., so I think I would walk anyway.
Big Joe just texted me, but it was not, "Hey, can I come on the show?" It was, "Hey, here's an advertisement for you."
Who sent that?
Big Joe.
Big Joe.
Oh, okay. He's done some stuff down south, man. He hit Florida up not too long ago. Of course, I think he works in Arkansas and Missouri, and but I don't know if he's got a match in the card. So so far, all I know is our 3 matches. Mine versus for the classic title, yours for the Central States, and of course the main one for the company.
Literally everything is on the line at this show.
Right.
Yeah,
I would imagine there's going to be a tag title match too. So I don't know, but I would just imagine.
Right.
Yeah, so don't fuck it up.
This is going to be in the big hall at the fairgrounds. So not where we normally wrestle, but the bigger part of the fairgrounds. But it's still going to be the same thing. It's November 23rd. Doors open at 6. Show starts at 7. It's just going to be, the biggest show for SICW. And I say that because so much is on the line. So definitely get your tickets. SICW.org is back up and running. So, get your tickets on there, or there's a phone number to call and reserve your tickets. And I know Mickey and Herb, they'll put the names on the seats, so they'll reserve them for you. But definitely it's going to be, everything's on the line, like you guys said. So it's our biggest show regardless. So definitely it'll be the best show to come watch and see, because everyone, unfortunately, even, Attila and, Haku and Barbarian, we're all going to give 100% that night, even more, because, this determines the rest of our lives, basically in SICW. So definitely. That's the big news right there. But I do want to kind of get off SICW for a minute, because something kind of cool happened last week. I don't know if you guys caught it, but NXT went head-to-head against AEW, which they normally do. AEW's Dynamite. It's on the same night. But NXT was a different twist this week. They were in the old ECW arena. And so they had a lot of ECW stars come back. Maybe for one night only. Hopefully some of them did great to where, they get put back on the roster. But even for one night only, it was a great show. And, there's clips on YouTube, so you guys can go around and catch up with that. But I just want to highlight some people. RVD was there. Rhino was there. Dawn Marie was there. The Dudley Boys. Nunzo was there too. And they did a great show. It was... RVD didn't get actually into the match or anything, but he came out and, just his appearance kind of interfered in the match, Dawn Marie was a special guest referee for one of the ladies' matches. Rhino, actually, he didn't have a match or anything, but there was a spot where, the Rockstar, who's the general manager of NXT, she was talking about the following show for this week, actually. And there was two other people, announcers, and I think a guy there was a manager. And he's a manager of a heel team. And, when they was talking, all of a sudden Rhino slid into the ring. And as soon as the guy turned around, Rhino ran and speared him, or in his case, he called it gored him.
He gored them.
Yeah. But so that was cool. And, the last match, which was the main event, it was a tag match. It was Bubba Ray Dudley and their champion, which I think is Strickland. And they were going against a guy who actually just jumped ship from AEW. Well, he got let go from AEW. He was wrestling Ethan Page. And I can't remember who he tagged with, because I'm not familiar too much with NXT, but his tag team partner was built like a brick shit house. This guy was fucking huge. But it was those two guys going at it, because Devon Dudley actually doesn't wrestle anymore. He actually retired from in-ring. He had an injury that kind of retired him. And, yeah, so he hasn't wrestled since. His sons are currently in wrestling. They were, I thought they were in NXT for a little while. But, and I could be wrong on that. So Bubba and Strickland was wrestling, and they actually lost to Ethan Page and his partner, but they got the upper hand on the end. And Bubba went to tell Strickland to get the tables, like it's his signature, saying. And he couldn't find. He went, underneath the ring, couldn't find any tables or anything. So he was like yelling to Bubba, "There's no tables to get." And then all of a sudden the music hits and Devon comes out and he's carrying a table. So he didn't get involved in the wrestling match or wrestle or anything, but they were still cool enough to add him in and have him bring out the table that they eventually used to put Ethan Page and all them in, through the table. So it was kind of cool. It was like bringing back nostalgia. And it's kind of weird, too, because, RVD, when eventually WWE bought ECW and kind of put it on the shelf, it was RVD that kept talking to Vince about, this brand is worth money. We should do like throwback pay-per-view. And eventually, I guess him talking to him over that enough that Vince went ahead and did it. and that was like one of the biggest pay-per-views they had, was bringing back all the original ECW guys, which eventually made Vince go ahead and bring back the ECW name. Of course, he didn't bring it back the way it should have been, and he had thrown in a bunch of shitty wrestlers in there. I mean, there was a guy, I think it was called Zombie or something like that, and he was just walking around like Frankenstein and literally had matches, and it was horrible. But some good people came out of that. CM Punk was able to move up and was able to become the champion for ECW. A little weird thing, Big Show became a champion of ECW, but that's kind of like the
Big Show kind of
downfall.
changed himself up and hit another gear when he went to ECW. Like, he was getting real stale, went there, reinvented just a little bit, adding things like the spear, and I thought he refreshed it a lot there.
Well, I do like it. I did like it when CM Punk became the champion, because I thought he was very cool back then. And not, some people love him or hate him. I'm a fan. Even that some people says he's got a little attitude. This is a business where sometimes having an attitude helps. And of course, me and Bobby got to meet CM Punk in person, and just talking to him and listening to his stories about Harley Race and being traveling around in the local independents, to his time coming up in the WWE system, and being underneath Paul. I can't believe I can't remember his name. Heyman. Woo, that's horrible. Paul Heyman's manager skills. Because at the time he said that Vince McMahon thought he was done with and over. Was going to get let go, but Paul was the one that says, well, let me bring him over to the ECW brand. And that's what kind of got his name out there even more. I knew him from the Ring of Honor when he was the champion of Ring of Honor. Because, being a fan of wrestling, you kind of watch the stuff that wasn't mainstream. So when you got to see Ring of Honor Saturday nights around midnight, and same thing with ECW. ECW was shown really late at night too, on the weekends. So it was kind of cool. Those were the programs that I was watching and seeing the guys come out of those two systems to make it, big. But so they went head to head with AEW Dynamite, and it was crazy numbers. Like 619,000 people watched the NXT versus 523,000 that watched AEW. Kind of sounds close, but when I tell you that NXT is not the main roster for WWE, SmackDown and Raw is the main roster. So when you got NXT, which is like they're in training, going against AEW's basically main roster, that's a big victory. At least in my eyes. Other people could think AEW or NXT is great, or NXT sucks, but when I think of, it's not the main roster wrestlers versus the main roster, and the NXT wins that. I don't know. It's one of those things where you root for the underdogs. Now, then again, they did have some ECW people on that show, but I would say if it gets eyes on the product, hopefully those people come back to the product. I mean, that was the whole purpose of this anyway. Being at the ECW arena, having the ECW originals come back for one night, if only being in special, spots, special referee or not wrestling, but Gorn, a manager or something. Definitely very cool to me. So, other things I want to throw out there. I think the biggest thing I want to throw out there is the Randy Orton's. What happened to Randy Orton over the weekend. So, if you haven't found out, Randy Orton was out with back surgery for the longest time. It was probably good over 2 years. Finally comes back. He wrestles, and the doctor told him not to even do the RKO anymore because he jacks his spine up every time he does it, and he just got done having back surgery, but he still does it. And Kevin Owens and Randy Orton's been having this brawl for all, basically, especially at Crown Jewel. They didn't even have a match. The match didn't start. Officially didn't start. No bell rang. They just went at it. So it was a big brawl all through the arena, through the crowd, through the fans, and I can't remember what it was, but they took a spot onto a table where both of them pretty much fell through the table. And then coming back from Saudi Arabia, actually, I think it was still taped from Saudi Arabia, but they had a match. Well, it wasn't even a match. Randy Orton came out to the ring. He grabbed the mic and he started cutting a promo, talking about Kevin Owens. And then Kevin Owens came out and, basically got in his face, and then they went at it again. But it ended with Kevin Owens. I said the move earlier.
Pile driver.
Pile driver. So he pile drived Randy Orton on the edge of the ring too. So it was still inside the ring, but closer to the ropes. But anyone that has a bad back, bad spine, I feel it every time that I land really hard on my tailbone, just because that's close to the ones that I screwed up. But so right now, WWE is saying that Randy Orton's out indefinitely. But what was the medical name for it?
Neuropraxia. It's just a mild blunt force trauma, and it temporarily cuts feeling off in the nerves around the neck. It's a normal 4 to 6 week recovery time, but WWE is like a teenage girl, dramatic.
Well, you never know. It could be, Randy's way of saying, I need a break for a minute, get a little bit stronger, come back and attack Kevin Owens. Or it could be, Randy Orton's had the back surgeries, was already told not to wrestle, decided to wave that off and come back to wrestle. So it was almost a matter of time. At least I feel it was almost a matter of time before something could happen to him, because he didn't really change his style. A lot of wrestlers that still had more time to give, they changed their style up. Like, Stone Cold, he's probably the best example. He actually in WCW, he was a wrestler's wrestler. He could run with Ricky Dragon Steamboat, Flying Brian. He was tag team champion with Flying Brian. But some of his best matches in WCW was against Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, and they were classics. But then he got hurt, and then Eric Bischoff fired him, and he sat around for a while before Paul Heyman called him up and said, "Hey, come to ECW." And even you can look it up in the interview. Stone Cold said, "Why come up there? I can't even wrestle." And Paul Heyman goes, "Can you talk?" And of course he can talk. So he just come up. He would fly him out there just to do promos until he was able to get into the ring, and that kind of started the whole Stone Cold persona per se. When he came back, when Vince hired him, he was Stone Cold. Matter of fact, he was throwing out some awful names like Iceberg and horrible names. But they paired him up with $1 Million Man, and he was Steve Austin, but what was he? He was called something different. But his finisher was, $1 Million Man's sleeper hold. What was his name? It wasn't Stunning Steve. That was WCW. The Ringmaster. That was his name in WWE when he first came out. So it was a horrible name, but he was throwing even worse names. Ice Dagger and it was just crazy stuff. But Thank God he
Yeah, but
switched
we
to
all know Bobby would like to be Ice Daddy.
Ice Daddy.
That's only in certain circles.
Right. Instead of a little bit using lube, he uses water. Uh, in other words, he spits on it.
Aussie charm.
But but yeah, and then Stone Cold, Steve Austin, he changed his style of wrestling. Ever since that injury that happened to him in WCW, he switched it up. He became more of a brawler than he was, a wrestler's wrestler. But that brings me to a thing that I wanted to get your guys' opinions on. So Randy Orton went out. I can't believe I forgot it again. Pile driver. Went out with a pile driver. So what I wanted to discuss and see if you guys can remember, Nate, since you're back in the 80s, and a lot of these moves were back in the 80s, I wanted to talk about moves that used to be finishers that are now just commonly used. Not as a finisher, but just something that's constantly thrown into a match and not used as a finisher, or even what we call in the business a signature move. They just throw it out like it's nothing. Anyone want to throw one out? Does anything come to mind?
The way overused super kick.
That is one of them. So
I was going to say the lariat because that used to be a finisher and now it's used multiple times a match.
Yeah.
I'm
However,
not saying anything against you. I'm just saying it's
not when Texan does it.
Right.
No, it's a finish.
Right. I only throw one clothesline is what finishes off. But yes, that is one. Definitely the clothesline, if you JBL, it's clothesline from hell. If you're Stan Hansen, it's the lariat. But yeah, clotheslines are commonly used. It's not. I hate to use the word a protected finisher. I guess it's protected on who's the person doing the move. But yeah, the super kicks. There's so many super kicks throughout the match now. There's a tag team in AEW that was famous, unfortunately, for throwing so many super kicks in their matches.
They call it super kick parties.
Yeah, but
and
if you're
and to make it even worse, they would double super kick and not have a finish.
Right. But if you're Shawn Michaels, that was your finisher. You used it one time, maybe he did it once or twice, depending on what the situation, what the situation was doing. But
now, to me, that just shows the difference in the skill levels between the Young Bucks and Shawn Michaels. Like, Young Bucks cannot be kicking a quarter of the strength that Shawn Michaels was.
There was a match that I watched earlier today that kind of get some information about this list, and it had Kevin Owens, and he was kicking not Big E, but the one that normally plays the trombone.
Xavier Woods.
Yeah, he kicked him from one corner across the ring to the next corner. It was like 4 or 5 super kicks, and Woods sold it, but it took 4 or 5 of them. I don't know. It's just my big one is the DDT. The DDT, Jake the Snake Roberts. He's actually been credited with starting that move, and so 80s wrestling, when you've seen him either working for the NWA or working for WWF at the time, once he hit the DDT, that was the end of the match. And now it's a common move that gets done throughout the whole match and maybe multiple times during the match, but is definitely not used as a finisher anymore, which to me is one of the weirdest things, because you're taking your opponent's head, sticking it out, you're sticking it underneath your arm where his head is still, past your back, and then you're landing on it. So you can really get screwed up by this hold, but yet now it's just commonly used as to get to the next hold or the next spot or whatever you're going with. But at the time, back when Jake was using it, that was a finisher. You know, he called for it because he actually would call for the DDT, and when he would use it, that was in the match. But also on this list, you know, the super kicks were used. Yes, there's moves that I didn't even think about. You know,
Spinning
there was,
goal.
what spinning
The
toe?
spinning
Yeah,
goal.
and that one, I know Dory Funk was famous for. The Briscoe brothers was famous for. That one's a weird hold because I myself would think you can get out of that hold and it shouldn't be a finisher. But back
Oh,
then,
all you got to do is kick them in the butt.
right. But the ones that I didn't think about was the top rope elbow drop.
Yeah.
Who was the biggest one back in the 80s that did the top rope elbow drop? Take a guess. Oh, it's the Macho Man.
Talking about Randy.
He would climb up to the top rope, raise his arms up, drop the elbow. That was the end of the match. But now the top elbow drop is used beginning, middle, end, but it's not used as a finisher even more. Even when they're paying tribute, like CM Punk, not to resurface him, he does the top elbow drop, and he even does it like Macho Man, where he raises his hands in the air. But that's not a finisher for him. He doesn't finish the match with the top rope elbow drop. But Macho Man, that was his finish.
I'm seeing a lot of sleeper holds that used to be a finisher, just like in our last release, the first match we had on there. Pat O'Connor did the sleeper hold finisher. Now it's used 2 or 3 times a match.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
that was Roddy Piper's finisher.
Yeah, so it did make the list, and let me reference. We're not going in the same order that they went in, but I do got to give props to WrestleLamia is the one I got. I watched one of their videos, and of course they didn't talk about it because of the Randy Orton situation. That was just one of their videos, and I think it was like a year old actually. But I want to give props to where I get some of my info from. So the sleeper hold, which was used by Roddy Piper, was used by $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase. We just talked about him in Stone Cold. There was another guy that was famous for it. Let me skip through here.
Pat O'Connor used it.
That he did. Oh, I guess I didn't write down anyone else but that. Oh, yes, I did. Beefcake. You know, Bruce the Barber Beefcake. We just had him in town. That was his finishing hold, too. You remember he would put him to sleep, and then he would cut their hair. You know, that was his big thing. He would put you to sleep, get the pin, 1, 2, 3, and before you got up, he was able to cut your hair because he put you to sleep.
Then he would throw it.
Yeah, they could throw it up in the air. But nowadays, the sleeper hold is used to bring the match down for the next segment, for the next high spot, or what they're going with. But it's definitely not used as a finisher. I can't remember seeing that as a finisher at all here lately. Let's see here. Shooting Star Press. You know, I don't know if you can recall this, Nate, but
I know who did that.
Yeah. So Evan Bourne used that move.
Go back to WCW. Give me a better wrestler. Come on.
Chris Jericho used to do that move.
No.
Oh, who in WCW?
I don't ever recall Chris Jericho doing a shooting star press.
He was actually, I seen a video, and I do want to say it was Chris Jericho. But Billy Kidman, is that who you're talking about?
That's the bad one.
They didn't even talk about him. I just remember that. Some things I can still remember. Some things.
Billy Kidman feuds with Juventud Guerrero are one of the things that got me into watching wrestling. They would hit the shooting star press, running across the ring apron to the floor outside. Hoovy would hit his 450 same way. Like, those two were just,
Splash
they
came into
clicked.
that too.
Yeah.
450 splash. 450 splash is on the list because those two moves are aerial moves, and they are so dangerous. You know, Brock Lesnar, he used to do this the shooting star press back when he was in OVW. And then he went to try to bring that back out with him and Kurt Angle. And he kind of overshot and didn't rotate properly and landed right on his head and almost broke his neck. If he didn't have those huge neck muscles, he would have screwed himself up. But so it's a dangerous move. And nowadays you can see it in almost all the matches in AEW. It's just a commonly used move. It's not a finisher, but it definitely was back in the day. And that's a newer move than a lot of the moves that we've been talking about. But still, it's being commonly used. Rick Rude's neckbreaker. That was his finisher there. And,
I forgot about the neck breaker.
Yeah. Sorry. That's a move that's commonly used now, is swinging net breaker. I am, unfortunately, one of the guys that uses a swinging net breaker every now and then, and I never use it as a finisher. It's always, I use the swinging net breaker and go into either an elbow drop or a leg drop. But I never use it as a finisher. But that was such a devastating move back in the day. And when Rick Rude put it on, he won. What's that?
I was going to say one of the guys in our main event, Gary Jackson, uses it every match.
Yeah. Let's see here. I'm talking about the top rope elbow drop. Oh, just a regular spear. Rhino, the Gore. That was his finisher. Roman Reigns kind of uses it as a finisher now. But on the same line, it's in every match. Just about everyone spears each other nowadays. But when Roman does it, he can normally pull out a win with it. So I guess it's kind of a finisher. But, Edge used it in WWE. He used it in AEW until he broke his legs. But that used to be the end all. I guess I have, done Rhino and everything. The Frankensteiner. How devastating move that was when Scott Steiner pulled that off in WCW. I remember watching that and be like, holy shit, that guy just jumped up, put his legs on that other guy's head and flipped him over. And that was, one of the finishes that they used as a tag team or him individually, because he called it the Frankensteiner. One of the most devastating moves, but yet now you can commonly see that. And when I was watching this video that they put together, so many people were using that move now, down to some of the girls wrestling. But when that first came out, that was devastating. That was new. No one ever did that move before, and that was his finisher. And now
it's an amateur wrestling move.
Right. Let's see here. Sleeper Hold we talked about. Oh, speaking of Ricky Steamboat, his finisher was he used to climb to the top rope and just do a crossbody onto his opponents, and he would win with a crossbody off the top rope.
Harley Race used to do that too, though.
Who?
Harley Race did crossbody too.
Yeah.
I mean, it goes along with, I peeked at a list earlier that had the splash on it. It's basically a splash. So, like, they go hand in hand with it.
Yeah. But it's just funny how that used to be a finisher, and it's a common move now. It's not a move that It's devastating to people. Um, yeah, so they did on their list. They also had this one, and even back in the day, I couldn't get with this being the finisher, and he was someone I talked about that I idolized as a kid growing up, being a WWF kid, which was Hulk Hogan's finisher, which was just a simple leg drop. You know, I couldn't believe that that would finish people off. But that was his finisher. Now, it's clearly fucked him up over the years, you know, dropping on his ass like that, screwed up his spine. He's had so many back surgeries and hip surgeries and leg surgeries. So, yeah, it was bad for him.
I remember on a was an episode of Hogan's Knows Best where he talked about that basically his hip was like oatmeal now, and like he'd have to get like a big old needle injection to his hip just to go through one more match.
Yeah, and yeah, he's still. Well, I think he's laid off of it now. But within the last couple of years, he was talking about how I got one more match in me. We can go at WrestleMania. You know, and there was even talks about him and Stone Cold, you know, actually having, well, he doesn't need the money. You know, he got that Gawker money, which was over $100 and some odd $1 million. But
Yeah, but how much did his ex-wife take of that?
that was after his ex-wife.
Oh, okay.
You know, because they had broken up and he was done on his luck. Even though he was Hulk Hogan, he could have had, you know, anyone. But then Bubba the Love Sponge offered his wife and videotaped it at the same time. Good friends. Let's make.
How about that picture right there? Mr. Gil Rogers using the running knee lift. Used to be a finisher.
Yes.
Yeah, and his stated finisher balls in your face. Now that happens all match.
Well, we'll get back to that picture here in a minute, but I wanted to throw one out there that you see quite often. Our own Cowboy Bob Orton's finisher, the superplex.
Yeah, that's, you know, even I think he was the only one in the 80s that used that. And that's why he was commonly known for that move. But yeah, nowadays you'd find Sami Zayn climbing the ropes to do that all the time. Yeah, so standing on the top rope, your opponent's on the top rope, suplex them off. You know, I think someone just did that off of a steel cage not too long ago, but I can't remember who it was.
I don't have Cowboy Bob Orton's height to get that kind of leverage. That's my issue.
Yeah, but you were on the top rope, and your opponent was across the cage. Yeah.
I think we both played there afterwards for a minute. We were both hurting.
Well, final shock. What about the backbreaker? Didn't they use that in the 80s as a finisher a few times?
Backbreaker?
I don't know. Yeah, I'm sure it was.
Yeah, I just watched a Bruiser Brody match where he finished with a backbreaker.
Now there's so many different variations of the backbreaker.
You know, I couldn't believe, but the lariat or the clothesline was not on this list, which clearly it should have been because, you know, Stan Hansen used that move and that was his finish. But I do got to say, if you watch a lot of his Japan matches, there's sometimes where he threw 10 or 12 of those in one single match. But normally it was like the lariat that you didn't see coming is the one that got you, and that's the one he finished you with. But
it took you 3 and a cowbell with one of them to get your title. So
to get my title, yes. So this has nothing to do with wrestling. Oh, you know, since you got the picture up, let me talk about this for a second. So this picture was actually done by Matt Cardona. So we talked about this last week about WWE coming out with their, it's kind of like the NWA, how they did the territories, and then how they're picking people to actually work for the NWA that are independent technically, but they'll bring them in, give them a NWA contract, and AEW does this too. The kind of like keep them under their wing, give them a contract, but they can work all the independents because they're not really used that much on AEW or the NWA. Well, the WWE is doing this, and it's called the ID. What does it say on the top there? ID.
WWE ID Prospect.
Prospects. That's the actual title, the ID Prospects. And those are people that are working the independents, and then they're bringing them to their. I don't even know if they're allowed to work the independents anymore once they sign this contract. It's not really clear yet on what the rules are, but there is. We talked about it last week how there's 4 places. I think it's 4. Booker T's one place. Cody Rhodes is one place. Rollins is one place. And I want to say there's one other one, but they're signing independent wrestlers, giving them a contract, kind of like, we got faith in you, but you need a little bit more practice, so we're going to give you to this territory for a little while, and we're going to make sure you don't have to work a job, so we're going to put you under contract so you can just work on being a great wrestler. Well, Matt Cardona and his long rival with Rory Fox had made that for Rory as a joke. Speaking of Rory, though, it is his birthday today. So, of course, when this airs, it won't be. But so I don't know if Matt Cardona...
Happy birthday anyway.
Send him a message anyway. It's fine.
Yeah. So,
just text
yeah, so as a joke, because, Rory, debuted like 15 years ago, 20 years ago for MTV. I want to be a professional wrestler. And always, talked about, working the big guys, working Haku, working Matt Cardona. They were in the same training for a while, and then their friends turned mortal enemies, So Matt Cardona actually made that and posted it on his, it wasn't Facebook, Instagram, posted it on his Instagram. And it's like blown up because and he even put down in the comments, if you know, you know, because, we know the story between those two guys and how they all call each other out, but they're waiting for the big money guy to put them together and make a payday for them. But it's definitely a fun little back and forth they got going, and this was just a nice little rib that Matt Cardona did for him.
That's a good one.
Oh, yeah. So this was the next topic. And it's totally out of the realm of wrestling, but I think it's so cool to have him coming out of retirement. Now, he did, we're talking about Mike Tyson.
Well, I would say, is it out of the realm because he did join DX?
That's true. And he was actually in AEW too for a little while. So, but they spoofed it. They ran an angle like WWE did. So, they brought him in for that. But
yeah, but I don't think it looks like he's just thinking it's exhibition. I think he wants to knock him out.
Right, and that's what I was going to say. He's, technically he's not retired, but he is retired because he had a couple expeditions. Matches that a lot of people thought was kind of phony, and that was just done for the money grab. But not saying that this isn't a money grab, because I'll tell you, there is so much promotion about this. It's going to be on Netflix. It's November 15th. If you have Netflix, it's totally
tomorrow
free.
night when this is aired.
Right. So if you have Netflix, it's totally free for you to watch it. But on Netflix, there's documentaries already. They've been going over Jake Paul. They've been going over Mike Tyson. It actually got my attention too. I started watching the documentary, and man, I tell you, he is really, Mike Tyson is focused on this, and he looks great. I mean, he dropped his weight. If you don't if you don't keep up on yourself, like me, I used to be a nice slender person, but I've definitely put on the weight here recently. Um, but if you don't watch yourself, you get out of shape. And he stopped working out, stopped doing his boxing, put on a bit of weight, slowed down in his older age. I mean, shoot, I got his age here. He's 58 and Jake Paul's 27. That's the age gap there.
Couple years.
And yeah, just basically half his age. But I think, Mike, let me just flip it for a second. Jake Paul has had a few boxing matches here lately. He was a big YouTuber. That's where he got his money, being on social media. Him and his brother, who's now in the WWE and been doing really good, surprising a lot of people with his athletics.
I'm one of them. When I first saw Logan Paul, it's like, great, another celebrity's here, but he has really spent the time and he puts his body on the line, so I will give him credit.
Right.
I was wrong about him.
Someone told me he's got the perfect gimmick, and so does Jake. You hate them because they're fucking rich, they're young punks, and they only got famous for being on social media, platforms.
And podcasts.
Right. So you got him that went into the wrestling world, and he's got this great thing because people hate him, and they still hate him, but then they got to give him respect for the moves that he's able to pull off. Yeah. I mean, him and Ricochet, when they collided, they were on the opposite ends of the ring, jumped off the top rope and clashed right in the middle, and it was perfect. It wasn't lopsided where Ricochet made it 3/4 of the way to the ring, closer to Paul before they collided. It was picture perfect that they collided right in the center of the damn ring.
So, do we think we might see a Big Texan Kowalski redo of that?
I don't think the ropes would hold. Matter of fact, I've put that ring together so many times that I know that those ropes won't hold.
Well, I want to see even the first part of it, because didn't they do a springboard to get up there?
Yeah, it was crazy.
And you and Kowalski are going to do springboards at the same time.
No. Still don't think it. I don't even know how we would bounce up on the top rope to get enough power to jump off to collide.
Well, it's going to sink down to the second rope, and then you're going to have the double rope.
And it's in the big room, so you can't balance yourself on the ceiling.
Right.
It's all coming together now.
But so Jake Paul has had a couple. He had a couple celebrity matches, boxing celebrity matches, and then he got into Bobby's realm with the MMA, where he boxed one of those guys who was the champion in the sport of MMA, but he got knocked down, and Jake Paul won that one, which was a little conspiracy. People think that he just took the dive, but who knows? But then he's had a few matches after that, and he's been training he's in the documentary that I watched. It shows that yes, he was a young punk. Yes, he did a lot of drugs. They talked about him being, all of his neighbors hating him for all the jackass type of sports that they used to do on the outside of his house and in the neighborhood and everything. But he said that he realized after he dabbled into boxing for a celebrity gig, he said he felt the bug, and he knew that it was either two roads for him. Either he could follow boxing and start getting in the shape and be mentally focused for matches, or he can stay a drug-headed, punk that would only spiral down and be living in the gutter. So he took the route of the boxer, and he's been training as a boxer, taking on those matches that where I said expedition, but what's the actual word for it?
Exhibition.
Exhibition.
Yes. So he's had a few of those besides his regular boxing matches. So he said he's set and he has everything to gain. Either because he could either gain more popularity from being the guy who got knocked out by Mike Tyson, or if he happens to beat Mike Tyson, he can be the guy who beat Mike Tyson. And then Mike Tyson has everything to lose, technically, I guess you would say. Come out of retirement, get all, shredded and everything, and to lose to what most people consider still a little punk-ass kid. So if he can come out of retirement at the age of 58, trimmed down, beat, knock this kid out, that's all he has to prove, that he can still beat a person half his age. But if he loses, then it's kind of bad for Mike Tyson. But who do you guys got? What's your guys' predictions?
I stand by my original before the fight got rescheduled. If it's in the first 3 rounds, it's Tyson. He's got to get that knockout in the first 3 rounds. If it goes beyond that, Paul's endurance is going to take over.
Nate, you got the same thing?
I tend to agree. Mike Tyson's a little bit on the age side, so I think the longer the fight goes, the more chance he has to lose.
He's still got that power where he can finish it in the first 3 rounds, but it's going to steadily drop off in the end of that second round and definitely in the third round.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting. I can honestly tell you guys that even though I grew up in the 80s and everything, I don't think I ever watched a pay-per-view of Mike Tyson. So I don't think I ever got the satisfaction of watching him beat the crap out of someone in, the first round. Because a lot of his knockouts happen in the very first round.
That's because while everybody else was throwing hooks in those times, uppercuts in those times, he was one of the originals throwing the hook, just taking people out instantly with it.
Right. So honestly, I'm thinking this is probably the first, and I could be wrong. As a kid, I could have probably watched my dad watch one of his matches, but I think this is actually the first match that I'll be able to watch in real time. Since then, I've watched a lot of his matches, especially on YouTube, where they got like the best of Mike Tyson that you can watch, and that they cram like 10 matches, 10 boxing matches into one video, and you get to see the best of. And man, he looked like, and I've seen a lot of the documentaries about him, and I don't know if it was Netflix that did it last year, but there was one documentary that came out that he didn't really approve of, and he's got a past that's not, it's well documented, but it's not the best past in the world. He went to jail a few times and lost all his money at once, and and then a lot of people still have a heavy look down upon people that are in the drug business, because he owns his own pot company and owns his own land that produces it, which a lot of people are start opening up about it, but it still has a little bit of stigma on it.
And then he got hungry in the ring the one time.
Right, yeah. Who else wouldn't eat an ear when they have an opportunity to?
Yeah, I prefer my ears cooked, but.
But yeah, so I think it's cool that he's coming out of retirement for it. I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to watch it. We don't have wrestling until the 23rd. So I'm going to sit down and watch it. And hopefully it's a good show. Hopefully, I kind of want it to be over in one match, in one round, just to have the old Mike Tyson. But if it goes longer, I'll be interested in keeping watching it. I think it'll be a good one.
Well, we have a little doubles practice that day, and then I got a friend throwing a party, so I got to go over there really quick. Hopefully it lasts until I get there.
Yeah. Well, it's on Netflix, so I'm sure if it's over pretty quick, you can watch and replay that thing all the rest of the year. But definitely be cool to watch it live. So the last thing I want to talk about. I kind of dabbled into his name a little bit. Oh yeah, let's recap this here real quick before I talk about this. So again, SICW. It's our last show. It's November 23rd. You know, it's for all the marbles. You know, so does Herb Simmons sell SICW to Stephen E. or not? You know, it's going to come down to this match of Haku, you know, WWE legend, the Barbarian legend, WWE legend, and Attila versus Gary Jackson, Ron Powers, and Danny Boy. You know, special stipulation. You know, our good friend Bob Orton Jr. is going to be handcuffed to Stephen E. so he can kind of have control of Stephen E. But you know, I talked about Lilith being out there, but I just thought about it in my head. You got Travis Cook that is going to be a major role if Stephen E. takes over. So you don't know if Travis Cook's going to come out there or any of
That
Travis
slime
Cook's
ball is almost
lagoon.
definitely lurking around somewhere.
Right. So definitely, that's the show to come watch. Like I said, and it's the last show of the year. So next year, all depends on how this show goes down. But so just want to give more props to that. You know, Bobby's got the 2 out of 3 falls with Glenn Williams for the Central States title. I got my rematch clause finally with Kowalski. Ooh, man, got the burps here. With Kowalski.
Yeah, we're gonna get some aerial moves out of you and Kowalski.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you watched yesterday's show or this past Sunday's show, depending on when you watch this, I was able to, you know, Kowalski had a match, and he, can't remember who he had, Jason Breed. And it was a good fight, but Kowalski won, of course, because Lucky P. Larson was out there, and Lucky gave him the crowbar, and he used that on Jason Breed. But I was standing by the curtain to watch this match. And as Kowalski came to the curtain, I just couldn't hold myself back. I just launched at him, and I fought him back into the ring. And I gave him the lariat. And I, you know, told Andy, the ref, I said, count. So he counted 1, 2, 3. Even though it wasn't, you know, a scheduled match, it wasn't for the belt. I just kind of wanted to prove that I could beat Kowalski with the lariat. And if you go back and watch that video, I took my my bicep, and I tell you, when I lariated him, it went right into this damn jaw. And when he came back up from the lariat, it was just all blood running down. And, you know, of course that infuriated him, but he came out and we just battled back to the back. But I definitely got one over on him. And so it's definitely going to be a battle on the 23rd. You know, even in Bobby's case, he's been ducking and dodging Bobby, throwing his little tag team partner out there, Sean Vincent getting involved. And this time, you know, luck might be on his side for one, but luck can't be on your side for 2 times. You know, he's got to beat Bobby twice. And I don't think there's no way Bobby can lose twice to him. So everything's on the line on the 23rd. So with that out of the way, I want to get back to Matt Cardona. So we do a spot where Bobby talks about what he gets in his monthly box. And I normally talk about what I pick up. And I will show you what I didn't even pick this up. My wife picked it up for me because it was our anniversary. And, you know, I got her some plants and some flowers there. And she picked up the Warlord for me, which was the Barbarian Barbarian's tag team partner for a long time. And he also had a LJN figure. And that's what I'm going to lean into. Matt Cardona just posted a video where he spent $11,000 on like 5 LJN wrestlers. and it was, you know, the most common Hulk Hogan, where he's holding the belt. Vince McMahon, Miss Elizabeth, which is one of the rarest ones to find. And I think there was one other one. But these were still in the package, and they were sent off to be graded. But he didn't send them off to be graded, but he bought them still in the package in the graded, because when you get something graded, it comes back in like a plastic container. Was it? Well, it was a plastic container, so you can see the figure and see how it looks. And grading is so weird when it comes to toys, because a toy could be mint in the package, but the package be all fucked up. But it still makes that toy worth a lot of money, because it's still technically in the bubble, still in the package. But it's like 4 or 5 LJN figures, and then it was the Hulk Hogan that I have, which is Thunderlips from Rocky 3, which for the longest time I thought that was his first wrestling figure, but it's not. It's pretty close to his second wrestling figure, because his very first one was a Japanese wrestling figure that's like totally expensive. But it was the Thunderlips Hulk Hogan from the movie Rocky 3. So it was only like 6 figures, but they were all graded. They were all in acrylic cases, or acrylic. I might be butchering that word. But he spent $11,000 on those, and I just could
Found
not
that Japanese money.
Yeah, he talks about how, and even Cody Rhodes, when he left WWE and went on the independent circuit, he talked about how he was making more money on the independents than he did in WWE. Now, since then, he helped create AEW, and then he left AEW to go back to WWE, and Cody Rhodes is now the Universal Champion. But Matt Cardona did the same thing. He was offered a contract and turned it down and went to the independents. And man, he's just been blown up. Since what was the name? Broski, or what was his name in WWE?
Zack Ryder.
Zack Ryder. So he was just a jobber in WWE as Zack Ryder. Went to the independents, went under his own name, Matt Cardona. And I tell you, he's probably like one of the highest paid independent wrestlers out there. And he talks about how he could have signed with AEW, because he's gone there a couple times and wrestled. Like when Edge signed to AEW, one of Edge's first matches was with Matt Cardona. He brought him in. Well, Tony Khan brought him in to wrestle Edge. And he's also wrestled for the NWA, because he was the NWA heavyweight champion for a little while. He beat Tyrus for the belt. But then I think Tyrus got it back. So he's been around. I tell you what, if you're an independent wrestler and you want to know how to make money doing this independently, Matt Cardona has got some videos here on YouTube under his channel. Was the Major Bindies wrestling podcast. I think I got it all in there. And he talks about the breakdown of how, as an independent wrestler, you might wrestle there for, say, like you go to an independent show, you might wrestle there for a little bit of money, but it's about being there at your table before the show, during the intermission, after the show, because you make more money dealing with the fans, talking with the fans, getting them to sign, buying your autographed picture. He's the king of merchandise, man. He's got so much stuff that he sells on his table. But he breaks it down for independent wrestlers on what you should charge, what you should get for merchandise to help sell your product, and how to sell it. And he breaks it all down for people, because he says that he makes more money than he ever did in WWE. Now, he said eventually he wants to come back to WWE because he wants to end his wrestling career in the stadiums. But right now, he's making more money going to the independent wrestling bookings. And Cody Rhodes, like I said, he did the same thing. He was making more money doing the independent shows. And it's kind of proof that the independent wrestling is profitable. But yeah, so I just wanted to throw that out there as one last thing. You know, I couldn't believe it. Just to have $11,000 to throw on like 6 wrestlers, wrestling figures is crazy to me. I mean, I would love to have it. I would love to do it. I'd love to be able to afford that at one time and be that. Everyone calls him the Michael Jordan of professional wrestling because he buys everything. When it comes to wrestling figures or even figures out, overall, because he's into everything, Ghostbusters, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and all that stuff. But that's all I got for you guys tonight. It's a very good show. I think talking about the finishing moves, I think there's a lot of people don't realize it. So hopefully we brought a little attention to it that those moves were finishers, and they still can be finishers if done right. Like our show. I'll just recap it. Our show for SICW, during our show, there's a lot of clotheslines, but there's only one clothesline to end the match, and that's my lariat. This is the best example I can give. But
Watch our last podcast. You'll see it on there with you and Bobby.
Yeah.
And it threw you out of the ring.
Yeah. No, I don't think that was that match, but yeah, there was definitely a match that happened too. But yeah, appreciate you guys subscribing to our channel. It's definitely doing better since. That match you're talking about was me and Bobby versus Rick Ruby, and okay, yeah, I definitely flew out of the ring after that clothesline. Sorry, the match is just kind of run in my head all as a flow. But yeah, so we're over 450. We've been climbing. Still love to get to that 500 magical number and then to the 1,000. But we need you guys to keep sharing the product and tell your friends to watch it through, because the algorithm it kind of made it a little bit clearer now. They put like our podcast, for example, they will keep it in the rhythm for a little while, but to keep it in the rhythm longer determines if people are actually watching it. So if this podcast, I don't know if we're over an hour or an hour and a half, but if you guys continue to watch the whole podcast in one setting, it'll keep us in the algorithm. So if you guys just hit the watch button, watch us for a minute, and then click off, it helps us. Don't get me wrong, but if you can watch us, our podcast, for the whole time, that will actually keep us in the rhythm a little bit longer. And definitely the likes and the comments. Please give us some likes. Share your comments if you like the podcast. If you don't like the podcast, that helps us even. So the more likes we get, if you guys write some comments down, share your thoughts on it. Like I said, share your thoughts. Tell us if you hate it. Tell us if you love it. Tell us what you would like to see on it. And that will help us out in the algorithm, and it'll give us ideas for the next podcast. But I appreciate it. Since we kind of got lifted under the band, we didn't even talk about that. Let me throw this out there really quick. I brought it to Nathan's attention last week. It was actually after our podcast, but WWE issued a bunch of strikes against people, mainly in the TikTok world, about them using footage. And it was amazing, too, because YouTube is pretty quick at catching it if you're using someone else's footage. But it was like openly free on the TikTok platform that people were, having it run in the background or even having it as the whole screen, and they can just talk over it. But WWE last week issued a bunch of strikes for people. So a lot of them I mean, they even pulled a couple accounts too and just shut them all down because they were using so much of that pay-per-view that was a week ago, the Crown Jewel. I just want to throw that out there. So, you know, we kind of got hit with that too, even though we proved them wrong. You know, Nathan has the paper, that the footage that we have, even the olden footage back wrestling at the Chase, that we have the right and the permission to show this footage. And he will contest anything that gets hit us. And it took a little while for WWE to back off, but they did it.
Well,
And
it's a personal thing with us because people do ask, and we've never really addressed it. And if you've watched this long, it's going to be addressed now.
yeah,
This
so,
goes back way before the podcast. That has nothing to do with any of us. Way back when the McMahons were first doing WWF, they couldn't really do a Midwest show, so the promoter of SICW allowed them to piggyback off his licensing. And through all that, because Herb was friends with Sam and Larry and all the greats from the past at Wrestling at the Chase, he had all the rights to all those old matches. Well, as the McMahons started to get more money, get more popular, they wanted to buy up everything, so they controlled everything. Because a lot of those wrestlers went on to go into WWF and WWE in the future. Well, when they contacted Mr. Herb Simmons, Herb told him to take a hike. Where I come in is when Jim invited me in, and then I came in, I negotiated with the help of those two to get the licensing for that for free, for nothing. And it pissed the McMahons off. Where they offered Herb money, Herb told him to take a hike, and then I come in and I get it for nothing. Total access, everything. And that's not because of me. This because of those guys. And that's a very simplified version of it. Because if we went into detail, it would take a lot longer. But,
right. I do want to throw this out there that Herb has sold portions, you know, clips, because he also owns Dick the Bruiser's library. And, you know, Scott Steiner and Rick Steiner started there. And when they did the biography on the Steiner brothers, you know, they paid for a match that Herb has in his library. So not that he's not willing to work with him, but Herb Simmons wants to promote St. Louis wrestling at the Chase, and we help do that as well. And we would just love to keep the spirit of St. Louis wrestling alive and not to forget the past. You know, because the past is what we watched, and it's what we're trying to keep the spirit of alive. So, but on that note,
and then with Herb selling a few of the rights to some of those matches for the specific purposes and reasons, WWE or the McMahons thought that they owned it unilaterally. And it's not that they didn't, not that they thought that, it's just they demanded they did. And it takes a bit for attorneys and other things to fight it out. So ultimately they have to back off. But YouTube has to go with where they make the money, and that's why they shadow ban us about once a year for 3 to 6 months.
Right. But with your help, we can, like we're doing it now, we're coming out of it, getting the subscribers, getting the views, getting us back, you know, rolling to the top. So thank you for tuning in. If you stayed this long, please, you know, share it with your friends and family. And like always, leave us a like and a comment. But for the Squared Ring Podcast and Bobby D and Nate Dogg and the Big Texan, thank you. And we'll see you next week. You guys have a good weekend.